You know, all things considered, I actually like being black, but if you had to put me in the 1930s, I'd probably change my mind real quick, and I wouldn't be upset if you did too. Speaking of the 1930s, did you know that Spider-Noir is getting his own live-action TV show? I mean, I don't know about you, but me personally, I'm as hyped as Drake was when he met Millie. I mean, there are endless amounts of potential for every Spider-Verse character, but Spider-Noir is special to me, probably because we both almost always wear black, but also because his universe is really interesting, set in the 1930s with superpowered individuals, and we all know how that kind of setup can work out. Although I'm not gonna lie here, I'm worried some snobby head at Sony will do to Spider-Noir what Avi Arad did to Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man, where he comes into your house, puts his shit on the wall, and tells you to be happy about it. And since I'm afraid of that happening, and because I'm a pretty good writer as shown through these two videos, I'm going to be pre-writing Spider-Noir so that someone like Avi Arad can't ruin it. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as ring that notification bell if you like this pre-write of mine. And if you don't, then you should still do, or else I'll do to you what I described Avi Arad did to these movies earlier. Let's start off by giving the basic rundown of how the show will work. The show will be 15 episodes long, and will have a semi-episodic format, which now that I say out loud, kinda makes it sound like The Gun. Good thing there isn't a white guy with a backpack nearby. What I mean is that the show will be just like House MD in the sense that each episode will have its own self-contained story, while simultaneously developing overarching plot lines in the season, so you could basically start at episode 10 and not miss anything too major in the story. As for the 15 episodes, I just want to go back to the year where It's Everyday Bro was still one of the best songs made by a YouTuber. And no, I will not argue this, don't even try it in the comments. Like, I swear to God, this song got way too much hate. The lyrics were good, the beat was goated, and when Tessa Brooks came on the track, this was my reaction. Oh, sorry about that. Like I was saying earlier, I had the 15 episodes because it fits the semi-automatic tone of the show, as well as help the viewer relive some part of 2017 again. Now, of course, I know the biggest problem with this structure is the fact that most people will consider it to be too outdated in today's modern era. And to that, I'd have to say the semi-episodic format for TV shows is not outdated, but bad storytelling is. If you're a good writer, you can pull off a 15-episode show that has a runtime of 30 minutes each, with the exception of the finale. And luckily for you, I'm a good writer. So let me show you and the writers at Disney who are clearly bad at their jobs how it's done with just the first episode. The first episode will open with Spider-Noir helping out a kid by saving a cat from his tree. And after helping the child, Spider-Noir is questioned on why he does what he does. We'll then mash cut to him getting cleaned up in his bathroom, looking in the mirror as the kid's question still lingers in his mind. Peter will then get called by J. Jonah to investigate the destruction of several buildings, tying it to the new villain Menace, who keeps slipping out of Spider-Noir's grasp due to his invisibility. As for why Jonah doesn't do this himself, it's because he's focusing on catching Spider-Noir and bringing him to justice. Peter suits up, and after a quick montage of Spider-Noir investigating the buildings, he'll realize the time and go check on Aunt May and Mary Jane, who are both working at Aunt May's shelter called Feast. It's here Peter will meet that same kid but out of costume, along with a few other civilians such as Howard. And if you don't know who this guy is, he was a part of the best mission in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Man, that game was so bad, a homeless guy dying was the best part of it. MJ and Peter will flirt like their lives depend on it, until a radio broadcast reports the Menace robbing a jewelry store. Spider-Noir will then make another appearance and fight Menace, ultimately losing due to Menace working around Spider-Noir's spider sense with his invisibility. After this failure, Peter will then return to the scene of the crime and investigate the robbery, realizing Jonah was right in the connection between Menace and the destruction of several buildings, noting that Menace must have a partner in crime helping him with all this, as the weapons Menace used were from the buildings the unknown villain destroyed. And after another montage of Peter putting the pieces together similar to TASM 2, he'll find their next target and plan a trap with an anonymous tip to the police to stop the crime duo. The final fight will be Spider-Noir facing off against Menace, with Smasher joining in, revealing herself to be the woman responsible for the destruction of those buildings. Because I like seeing attractive women with muscles, Spider-Noir will obviously win the fight using his intellect and spider sense to stop the duo, turning them into the police, who then tell Spider-Noir that they were working under the Boogeyman, or as the public knows him, Damian Marconi, who's basically this show's version of Spectacular Spider-Man's Tombstone, and also has ties to Uncle Ben's murder. More on that later. I want the final scene of this episode to be Peter and Mary Jane chilling together while she reads a book, having a flashback of the night Uncle Ben died. In this flashback, Peter will be in his Spider-Noir costume, finding Uncle Ben on the ground, his guts literally rearranged. He'll take the mask off, and Uncle Ben will tell Peter the following before he passes away, giving us the answer to the question the kid posed earlier in the episode.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
For the second episode, I want to switch the point of view and have it take place from the villain's perspective, mostly because I think it's always a treat to see the villain's character as the main focus. The episode will start with a deal being made between several mob bosses, the Boogeyman being one of them. The deal goes south though when Spider-Noir shows up with nothing but his underwear on. Wait a minute, that's the wrong script. The deal goes south when Spider-Noir shows up and crashes the meeting, leading to the arrest of one of the mob bosses that was too fat to run. Spider-Noir then internally promises to make the Boogeyman pay for Uncle Ben's murder. Marconi will then recount the various times he's been hindered by Spider-Noir, realizing that if he doesn't stop him then he'll have more than enough evidence to convict him, and comes up with a plan to beat him. Meanwhile, Peter will be at his apartment with all the circumstantial evidence he's collected on the Boogeyman up to this point, but Mary Jane will try to talk him out of it, citing his obsession with making Marconi pay as his demon in a bottle, leading to an argument between the two which will end on Peter shutting out Mary Jane. We'll then transition into a flashback of Peter first meeting Mary Jane. Their interaction is awkward as the two were set up by Aunt May and Madeline Watson to volunteer together. Peter still has the dorky getup, but it covers a sense of righteous anger as they met not too long after Uncle Ben's passing. But Mary Jane doesn't mind it. She finds the dorky getup cute and practically asks him out. This flashback will be interrupted by a crime report of the smasher wreaking havoc in Harlem after she escaped from prison. And Peter will look at the folder containing the evidence, MJ's words still lingering in his mind, and then at the radio, deciding to put aside his own hatred for Marconi to save the city from Smasher's rampage. But this statement will be easier said than done because Smasher's superpower is indestructibility, making her damn near impossible to beat in most circumstances. And Peter will feel this reality during their fight, as it gets brutal.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Towards the end of the fight, Spider-Noir will use someone's car to crash into the Smasher, hoping that her mind isn't as unbreakable as her body. This move will kind of backfire though, as Peter sees his life flash before his eyes while he crashes the car into Smasher. All of his memories with J. Jonah, Aunt May, Uncle Ben, and Mary Jane cloud his mind, and while he does win the fight, his face under the mask tells a different story. After the fight, Peter will talk to MJ and apologize to her, stating that he almost let that demon in a bottle consume him, and that he'll put the investigation on hold for now. Meanwhile, Marconi will be drinking his glass of wine while watching the news, happy as his plan to distract Spider-Noir by getting Smasher released actually worked, and will then look at the laundry list of supervillains, wondering which one to choose next. Episode 3 will start with a dream sequence, or more like a nightmare, as Peter will be shitting bricks, seeing himself as Spider-Noir taking revenge and killing the Boogeyman in Times Square, with every TV screen capturing the murder. Peter will see himself as a member of the audience, with Spider-Noir being a completely different person, and when he removes his mask, he'll have no face, freaking out Peter as he'll wake up in a disoriented manner, causing MJ to worry about him, asking if it's the memories of his superhero life getting to him. But Peter will dismiss her concerns the same way the hot Asian girl in my class curved my romantic advancements. Sorry, that was unrelated. Moving on, Peter will volunteer at Feast to get his mind off of things, finding the same kid he met in episode 1, but this time as Peter, with the other volunteers questioning where the kid's parents are, but Peter will ask the boy himself, who tells him that he doesn't know where his dad is. Mary Jane will then appear, and after a quick conversation about the kid, Peter will agree to act as Spider-Noir for the time being. After a quick montage of Spider-Noir investigating the father's whereabouts, he has a flashback of his own parents, citing how different his life could have been if they had been around. Spider-Noir will come up short on the only leads he has and express his failure to the kid, and the two will share a nice moment about their fatherlessness. It's during this moment, however, where the kid states a key clue about his father, mentioning the Boogeyman. Spider-Noir will use various henchmen and cross-reference their testimonies with the father's known roots and find the apartment the kid's father's in. The body has been there for days, with a note reading that he'll make it to Feast. The cause of death is assumed to be a suicide due to the positioning of the body and the weapon, but Peter knows far too well who caused this. Both Peter and Mary Jane will talk about this, and after Spider-Noir tells the kid the bad news, he promises to find the killer who did this to his father and make sure they pay. The start of this episode will be like getting in a car with your friend who just recently had a bad breakup, and then starts the car ride with, "I gave her everything," and 140 miles per hour. And if you don't understand that analogy, then you've probably been diagnosed with a "I'm not subscribed so I don't understand the nightmares" analogy disease. Why not? It worked for the last girl that did it. Okay, we're straying away from the analogy. Basically, this episode will go from 0 to 100 in the span of 10 seconds, putting you in the perspective of Spider-Noir as he fights several lackeys in a building on the docks. Spider-Noir will then question what got him into this mess, leading to an 8-minute earlier transition. By the way, this is not how long the flashback is going to be. I'm just using that image from the Suicide Squad as an example. In this flashback, Peter will talk to MJ as she questions why he doesn't want to help Marconi, which is a crazy thing to say if you've been paying attention to the last 5 minutes. But it leaves you with a question. Why would she be asking this? What happened to Marconi that would make Peter need to help him as Spider-Noir? And don't worry, unlike that Asian girl I mentioned earlier, I'll actually answer that question because she never responds to my texts. Sorry, I just got lost in memory. Back to the present, Spider-Noir will find the mother of Damian Marconi in the building and try to escape with her. While he fights off the lackeys, Cassandra Marconi will thank him, telling him how much Damian has done for this world, complaining about the people using everyone he loves to go after him. She does this in hopes of swaying Peter not to kill Marconi himself. Spider-Noir will eventually snap at her soapboxing, telling her every awful thing Damian has done as the boogeyman, mentioning the death of his Uncle Ben at the end of that list. Cassandra will then do what all terrible mothers do when their son's hand gets caught in the cookie jar and use every single piece of mental gymnastics you can think of to justify murder, drug trafficking, and tax evasion. Which, let's be honest here, it's not that hard to justify tax evasion when you look at the federal government, both now and 2 years ago. Cassandra will then go on to state that Damian couldn't have killed Uncle Ben because he doesn't kill anyone that's of no consequence. So unless Uncle Ben had his hand in the cookie jar as well, she doubts Damian is the one actually responsible for his death. See, I'm good with analogies. Spider-Noir will then think for a moment before escorting Cassandra out and taking her to Marconi, who promised to stop all of his illegal operations for 3 weeks if Spider-Noir had helped him. And just like his mother said, Damian proves himself to be a man of honor and pauses all operations, as well as letting Spider-Noir go free despite having a large advantage in both territory and numbers. The episode will end with Peter sitting on a rooftop, frustrated at why he helped a man who he believes still murdered Uncle Ben, until he has a flashback when looking into a window of another building showing him hugging his mother, realizing that just because he can't share that moment with his mother anymore, doesn't mean Marconi should have to live that same fate. At the start of this episode, we'll be watching Spider-Noir take on his universe's version of the Black Cat, Lilypad. She's a thief who uses gadgets and equipment to mimic the powers of a frog, tongue-like grapple gauntlets, boots that let her jump 2 stories high, and a mask that generates bubble streams. Because the bubble stream is traveling at the same speed as a bullet. And for all the visual learners watching this right now, here's an accurate representation of how that'll look. Lilypad will be robbing a jewelry store, and Spider-Noir will show up on cue. But instead of stopping the robbery, he helps her rob the place?
That's not what happened.
It's right here where we'll transition into J. Jonah interrogating Peter on what actually happened at the robbery. Peter will explain that Spider-Noir chased Lilypad down after stopping the robbery, but J. Jonah reveals that Lilypad still got away with at least 20 grand worth of jewelry. We'll then transition into the next scene where a lady tells Jonah how Spider-Noir and Lilypad fought. She'll go into detail how it looked like they fought many times before, with some of their dialogue mirroring that too. But Jonah in Triple J fashion will try to twist it into Spider-Noir and Lilypad having a complex relationship, if you know what I mean. The lady will then tell Jonah that their fight almost got an officer killed, which brings us to the cop being interviewed by Jonah. The cop details how Spider-Noir didn't care for the safety of the bystanders, despite earlier testimonies proving otherwise, and cared more for Lilypad, playing into J. Jonah's obsession with hating Spider-Noir. But just like Insomniac J. Jonah, this version of Jameson doesn't let others by his integrity.
Well, that's my job, Mr. Mayor. All I have is my integrity, and I won't compromise it for anyone.
Jonah will question the officer's time on the job, mentioning that he hasn't seen him that much despite knowing most of the police force by now, which will cause the officer to leave. Keep this officer in mind for later. The scene will then cut to Peter asking what the others said after the interviews are done, but Jonah will just tell him that Spider-Noir was probably in cahoots with Lilypad, as their fight left the store vulnerable for more thieves. Peter will realize this, suit up with the quickness, and go back to the store, only to realize he's too late, and that 20 grand just turned into 2 million. The ending scene will be the officer walking out and going into his police car with Lilypad sitting in the back, and in the trunk will be all the jewelry they stole. For this episode, I want to make it focus on Mary Jane specifically, since that can always work if done well, which it will be. The episode will start with a flashback of MJ with her father questioning what she wants to be. She'll say some random career that women love to go to, and her father will demean her for it, saying that she'd be better off as a housewife to a strong man. But she wants to be more than just his dream, she wants to be her own person, which transitions into Mary Jane volunteering at Feast. Peter mentions his investigation into a villain of the week, and MJ offers to help, but Peter denies her, saying that he wants to keep her safe as his two lives should always be separate, which is true, because when they aren't, you often get shit like this happening. MJ doesn't listen to him though, because let's be real, if she wasn't gonna listen to her own father, what made you think she was gonna listen to her boyfriend? She'll use the Daily Bugle to further Peter's investigation, neglecting Aunt May in the shelter. Her investigation leads her to an abandoned apartment building where the villain Menace is fighting Spider-Noir. Menace starts a massive fire, which makes Spider-Noir abandon the mission to save Mary Jane. Menace ends up escaping, by the way. This failure sparks an argument between Peter and Mary Jane on a rooftop, where Peter rightfully chastises her for not listening to him and putting herself in danger, as well as screwing up the one lead Peter had on Menace. But MJ will admit how she feels trapped in a box, that she wants to be more than just a volunteer at Feast and a housewife. She wants her life to mean something and add real value to the world outside of the plan everyone else already has for her. After Peter shows us why he has the most love interest out of any superhero, they'll agree to be partners and take down Menace together. They'll spend the night investigating Menace's past activity instead of recreating this sound effect. This will lead them to Menace's current hideout, where Spider-Noir will fight Menace, who is ultimately blindsided by the police. MJ had called them earlier just in case Menace had a chance of getting away. The episode will end with Peter and MJ having a nice dinner date, and Mary Jane thanking Peter for understanding her. Now I understand some people may dislike this episode concept because my politics don't agree with it, but to that I have to say, I feel like I have to say this now given how political the current climate of YouTube has become. The goal of this episode is not to sell an agenda or political belief, but to instead tell a good story about a woman wanting to be more in an era of America where optimism was synonymous with delusion. And anyone who mindlessly politicizes everything they see is someone who doesn't get invited to parties, and for good reason. Since this episode will technically be the midpoint of the season, I want this one to be a real tearjerker. It'll start out with Peter and Mary Jane greeting Aunt May, who has been noticeably absent from Feast in the past few days. She'll be blatantly disrespectful to the homeless people, disregard Peter and MJ's suggestions, and focus way more on the bottom line than the actual goal of the shelter. She acts in a strange manner to say the least. But before Peter can question her, she leaves for Harlem, stating that she has a meeting there to attend to. Meanwhile, MJ will greet the 5-0 at Feast, who questions where Aunt May is. MJ lies because the police were pretty corrupt in this time period and tells Peter about the interaction. He spies on those cops as Spider-Noir, and it's then revealed that the cops wanted Aunt May to arrest her for embezzlement. Peter's conflicted because he can't imagine Aunt May actually doing this given how similar she is to Mother Teresa, but cannot deny the evidence the cops have on her. He wonders what he should do in this situation, but MJ tells him to just follow his heart and do what he thinks is right. Pretty cliche, I know, but this is probably the weakest point of this pre-write, which would still make it stronger than the Thunderbolts. Peter has a flashback of Aunt May turning down a massive deal that would have sold the rights of Feast to a guy named Nicholas Oswell, who would have used the franchise to further his reputation to hopefully win his future campaign for mayor. She turned it down because she wanted Feast to remain as a sign of hope for the people in New York and not a commodity for someone's future endeavors. This flashback makes Peter track down Aunt May's location as Spider-Noir, revealing that it was actually a villain impersonating Aunt May, the villain in question being Doppelganger, a villain who can mimic the physical form of anyone he touches for 2 hours. Now you may be asking why not just use the chameleon for this episode, and the reason for that is because if each Spider-Verse character gets their own unique city, powers, and even art styles, then they should also have their own unique villains as well. Doppelganger taunts Spider-Noir with the location of the real Aunt May and what he's potentially done to her, which will result in a rightfully brutal beating of the villain, hand delivered by Spider-Noir, who almost considers killing him until he figures out where Aunt May is due to Doppelganger slipping up with his words. Peter finds Aunt May in an apartment, handcuffed to a desk with tape over her mouth. The episode will end with Aunt May giving a speech on how she wanted Feast to be her husband's last good deed, as it was his idea when they were younger, with her final statement being that Uncle Ben would be proud of Peter if he saw him today. Now you may be asking why I said 15 episodes was the way to go 1 minute and 11 seconds in, yet only gave you roughly half of the deal. And no, it's not because I'm a physical manifestation of your bag of chips having less amounts in them despite the number before the decimal going up, or because I follow channels that constantly criticize the black community despite telling you that I like being black earlier. The reason is because I still want to leave some room for actually good writers to leave their mark on the series. Spider-Noir is one of the more interesting Spider-Verse characters in terms of backstory, and I wanted to play into that to the fullest extent, just like I said I would. Like and subscribe even if you didn't like this video, check out the Patreon if you have the urge to gamble but actually want to get something out of it this time, and thanks for watching.